Thank you for facing the elements today to join us here at 1-to-1's Mining Investment Event Hong Kong. Today we're talking all about Mongolia and the opportunities and challenges faced operating in the jurisdiction today. We're joined by three very knowledgeable panellists, starting with Colin Moorhead, Executive Chairman and Managing Director of Xanadu Mines, Naran-Uchral Tsedev, in-country CFO for TMK Energy, and Zunduisuren, Managing Director of Asian Battery Minerals. Welcome.
Thank you.
So can we get a brief introduction of each of you and your companies, please? Starting with Naran.
Good day, everyone. Our focus is developing a coal seam gas project in Mongolia, and most people know Mongolia for being a coal-rich country, but until the unconventional gas part of the petroleum law was passed in 2014, it wasn't really defined who gets the gas within the coal, and after that it cleared the path, and we acquired our license in 2019 in one of the largest active coal mining areas, which covers 8,400 square kilometers. And since then we did the RTO in Australian Stock Exchange, and since then we've been exploring, and now we're in the testing phase of testing our gas flow rates, and yeah, we're at that stage.
Excellent. And Colin, next.
Thank you. Xanadu Mines is a good old-fashioned metals explorer. We're focused on copper in the South Gobi region, but also consider Mongolia to be highly prospective for other metals. We have two major projects, one being the Hamagtai copper-gold project, and the other an earlier stage project, Red Mountain. Hamagtai is a billion-tonne low-grade porphyry system, and we've completed a scoping study on that. In all likelihood, will be the next large copper mine to be built in Mongolia, and we've recently done a partnership deal with the Zijin Mining Group, where Zijin have come in as a shareholder of Xanadu and also are funding the project with a direct investment in the project. We're halfway through a pre-feasibility study, and we hope to be in a position to complete that at about this time next year.
Thank you. And finally, Ghana.
Hi, Asian Battery Minerals. We are a Mongolia-focused exploration company who is doing exploration in critical minerals, so that including graphite, lithium, and nickel and copper. One of our projects are called Oval Nickel Project. For that project, we were selected this year for BHP Explore program and have received $500,000 grant plus assistance on that project. So with that project, we made new discovery in nickel in the western part of Mongolia. And on top of that, currently we are a private company, so we are in a process to become a listed company in probably within the next 4 to 6 months.
Excellent. So to kick things off, as we know, Mongolia is a very vast yet quite underexplored mineral-rich landscape, but it does offer a wealth of opportunity for large-scale exploration. Let's just start by going into some of the things that make it such a beneficial jurisdiction for the mining and energy sectors. I think, Naran, be fair to start with you.
Yeah, well, there was lots of investment and in exploration companies during 2008, 9, 10-year period. And then, of course, that's when we first attracted real international money to the country. And after that, I guess it's been like lots of things has changed, which went really unnoticed by a global investment community, is that we made so many advancements in getting things more certain and clear. And now there is, for example, in our sector, which we are in, even though we're gas focused, we're also involved in energy. So like the key ultimate goal for us is to produce a new energy source for the country and maybe export. So for us, we're almost operating on a totally new ground and new legislation, and which is quite favorable. And I think that's one of the key key reason why there is 3 companies who are listed on ASX who are developing coal seam gas. So I cannot really say specific things about more on the mining side,
Okay,
but yeah, more like petroleum law, unconventional gas, it's quite favorable. And also the first thing we have to get it done is sign a product sharing agreement with the government. So basically that outlines the path. So after that, there's very few things that leaves uncertain. So it's very easy to operate.
Okay. Anyone want to continue?
Well, Mongolia is already established mature mining jurisdiction in East Asia and Central Asia, right? Currently, Mongolia exports from 320 to 350 tons of copper to global markets, mostly to China, plus that we export roughly more than 30 million tons of coal, from coking to thermal coal to China. With the Rio Tinto's OT development going underground and adding more copper, and Colin's Xanadu hopefully will be a producer with the Zunduisuren. I think the copper production from Mongolia coming is going to be potentially tripled in the next 10 years, and that will put Mongolia as probably one of the top 10 to 15 copper producers in the world, supplying roughly 3 to 4% of the market, right? With such a two big commodities like a copper and coal, which is usually the main focus. With that, there are lots of different mineral opportunities presented in Mongolia. In a sense, Mongolia is quite underexplored in that regard. And that including coal-based methane, that includes critical minerals. So if you do a systematic exploration in Mongolia, I think there are lots of large deposits to be found.
Thank you. I think I'm a global explorer. I've worked all over the world, and I think of things in terms of prospectivity. You know, what rocks do we have, and are they prospective for the resources we're looking for? 2, I look at ESG risk. Can you actually build a contemporary and sustainable mine that's good for all the stakeholders in that jurisdiction? 3, of course, is fiscal risk, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that. But I see Mongolia as an emerging economy in that regard. And finally, it's that operating and market risk, and here we are in Mongolia, sitting on the doorstep of the biggest customer for our products in the world, as well as a domestic need. I see a real domestic need for gas and energy in Mongolia. So in terms of prospectivity, the Central Asian fold belts run right through Mongolia, and they host some of the biggest and best deposits in the world. And there's lots of them in Kazakhstan next door, and there's lots of them in China. And I believe the only reason we haven't got lots of them in Mongolia is because we haven't looked for them yet. So I really congratulate Asia Battery Metals for getting that Explore thing with BHP. The biggest company in the world chose 8 companies, I think, out of 200, and these guys were one of them. So we're very proud of you. Well done.
Sure, there's many companies that would love to be in that position. Let's move on. So Mongolia generally imposes no limits on foreign ownership of investments except for foreign state-owned entities. However, we have to mention the mining law does allow the government to acquire up to 50% of mineral deposits deemed strategic value to the state. In a broader sense, how do you feel the government supports your industry? Do you feel they're enablers of the mining and energy sectors? Anyone to start with?
Okay. I had the opportunity to be on a board of a company called Oyu Tolgoi. So that's 34% owned by Mongolian government, right? So I was on a board on behalf of the government of Mongolia. And during the last negotiation with the company, and I can just would like to point out a couple of things is usually if the company finds deposit, if it's large enough to impact the economy of the country, then government, yes, has a right to retain up to 34%. Okay. And that's only, it's not free carry, it's not free. It's basically government is going to pay equity into the project in the funding of the mining, right? So 51% is refers to a deposits that's actually found by government funding. Okay. So that actually refers to deposits that's been found pre-1990, okay. So which is very seldom left now. So I really think for mineral project there's a less risk on that one. So.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. On just for negotiations, it's quite commercial negotiation between the government and the investor. I think.
Okay. I think there's many ways to seek rent from a resource, and I think that the government representing the community should always do that in a fair and balanced way. The difference is risk, and I've seen this a lot around the world, that equity risk is actually quite high, and this is not an unrisky game we're playing. It's big capital, and it's long paybacks, and it's long-term investment, and apples to apples, a royalty is always a lower risk than an equity position. However, having said that, I do see, and I think you said it well, that where the project is so big that it shapes the economy of the country, then maybe there is a strategic imperative for a government to have that. Yep. Having said that, I am agnostic about who owns the asset and the shares, because ultimately, when you do mining and energy projects well, you benefit all the stakeholders in an appropriate way.
Okay, moving on. So I think, Naran, you mentioned that the mining laws have reformed to be more favourable towards mining companies in the energy sector. There's still several challenges faced operating in the country, such as infrastructure and permitting times. What should companies consider before attempting to navigate working in Mongolia?
In-country experience,
okay,
mostly. So I think that's one of the key. Our team has been quite fast on progressing the project, and it all has to do with the in-country experience. I think you need, to stay investable, you have to be audited and following lots of principles, governance things. Yep, that part is covered by our experienced team from Australia as well. At the same time, having an in-country team that's, whether it's a private or public company, who knows to get things done and move the project forward, and sees the issues more on a grounded basis, with not so much expectation, just knows it. Yeah, I think that would help anyone avoid lots of disappointments, in my understanding, and that's where we have the most, I would say, pros. Our pros is on that side. So, and I think with Asia Battery Minerals as well, I think one of them, we got listed while there was a COVID, right? And we still managed to get lots of things done during this time. And I think this balance of team is very important, in my opinion.
Okay.
You can't build an Australian mine in Mongolia, right? And you will muck it up if you try. And I agree, without real deep local knowledge and understanding, you're silly. I mean, I don't consider myself a Mongolia expert. I'm surrounded by people who are. But one of the things I consider when considering how to get things done in Mongolia is you need to understand how really hard it is to do stuff elsewhere. In my home state of Victoria in Australia, I wouldn't consider investing one red cent. Don't quote me on that. But I know that stuff can get done in Mongolia if you do it the right way, with the right people, and respectful of your stakeholders. So I think it's one of Mongolia's great advantages, is that it takes 5 to 10 years, give or take, to get a big copper mine off the ground. Whereas if I did that anywhere else in the world, it's probably 20 to 30 years. And that's a major advantage.
Yep, that is. Anna?
Well, I think these two
Summarised it.
Yeah.
Summarised it. Okay. Let's move on to investment into the region. Where are we seeing the most allocation in funding, in your opinions? And do you believe the government is doing much to support investment into junior mining companies who can actually invest into these projects?
Okay. I think what really government can do to support mining project, I think the perspective comes from that question. I think governments around the world probably can, shorten the permitting, smoothen the legal relationship between the stakeholders. On top of that, government can do is really improve the infrastructure, right? So what Mongolian government is doing lately is it's in the process of reforming some of the policies regarding mining, including mining law, mineral law, plus other related business laws, and then also improving investment protections. And top of that, in 2022, government introduced policy called New Revival Policy. So it actually addresses the economy in post-COVID environment. And that addresses three very important things for mining. And that's one of them is infrastructure development within the country. And the second one is actually development of the borders. So miners, what we want is we want to make sure that we mine the product and that product can be moved within the country into the market and cross the border without any delay. So I think that's the direction government is currently working and modernizing things. So I think within probably, and a third one is the energy supply. So I think these policies will come into fruition within the next 5 to 10 years. As it gets accomplished, I think the Mongolian mining will expand much faster, I think.
I think one of the key things or areas for improvement are how we nurture a junior company environment in Mongolia. Have a saying, no juniors, no majors. Mm. So Zunduisuren there off the back of Xanadu. BHP put a toe in the water with Asian battery metals, and of course Ivanhoe Turquoise Hill was the start of the great story that got Rio into the country. And to do that, you need to be able to peg ground, obtain mining and exploration leases, and importantly, you need to be able to add value to those and then trade them, because our job as a junior is not to become a major mining company necessarily. It's to facilitate a major mining company to come and spend billions in the country. And they're currently barriers there are barriers to that. They're well recognised by government, and I think working in the right direction to improve the environment for juniors. And I know that there's a lot of companies out there looking at what we're doing at these three companies, and are hoping that we will succeed, because that will be a great signal for others to come behind us.
Excellent, thank you. So most of you have mentioned considerations of key stakeholders in your project. Can you expand on key ESG considerations for companies looking to operate in Mongolia?
Well, ESG, right? Yeah. So, well, I think it depends whose perspective we're speaking, because like coal, gas is fossil fuel. So, from a certain perspective, like in terms of the environment, some investor would argue that it's still a fossil fuel. But if you come to Mongolia and realizes that people were burning raw coal for the cold months, and if you can provide gas, convert that into gas, it's like 95% cleaner. So like we know this gas, what we're trying to achieve is like transitional energy source. It's not the ultimate goal. Maybe renewable or much cleaner would be preferable, but until we get there, we need this fuel for transitioning, and I think that's that gets the most votes. And as for the local communities, I think they're not really familiar with gas exploration companies. So their expectation is that they try to treat us like a mining company, like almost act like the same. But at the end of the day, we're just drilling a hole, and that's it, right? There's very less footprint for us. And also, I think because most of the mining, coal mining happens open pit, the methane gas is just, evaporating, I would say, to the air. But if you operate it, basically we're degassing the field, right? So, and whether if you can use it for commercial purposes, that's great. And while we're exploring at this stage, we're flaring it. So I guess it just takes some time to help understand and see from our perspective that it's very important for the country.
I see ESG from three perspectives. One is market is demanding it, product to be ESG compliant, product to be transparent, traceable, especially from critical minerals, because it's the importance of critical minerals being in energy transition is it has to be green, right? And the second one is from company perspective. Company needs to make sure we see ESG as part of our risk assessment and risk management exercise. Because with the strong ESG component, it enables companies from exploration to development to operation quite effectively compared to other companies. And if you look at Mongolia, where companies succeeded in getting permitting, getting social licenses, I think that's the companies who had that strong ESG and stakeholder management and collaboration.
Absolutely.
ESG is just a fancy term for managing expectations, I think. And in my simple model, it's like a three-legged stool. You've got employees who expect you to create, they trust you with their lives and their livelihood. So it's all about safety and employment and advancing their families. The community and government expect you to exploit the resource sustainably in a contemporary way, and that's using the best energy mix available and looking to minimise your scope 1 and 2 emissions, etc. And I think we're moving forward on that. And I, for the record, am a big believer in gas as a transition energy for us, particularly in Mongolia. And thirdly, the people that provide you with debt and equity have a right to expect a decent return for the risk they're taking. And if you can balance all those things, the stool stands up. If one of those legs gets out of wonk, it falls over. So, when I was a younger man and had hair, I worked out that I had to try and do that, and then I lost all my hair.
Thank you for that. So moving on, let's look at the economic outlook for Mongolia. Do you think it bodes well for future projects hoping to begin operating in the region? Colin, do you want to start?
Oh, absolutely. As I said, if examples of juniors like ourselves can commercialise a discovery and bring in a major investment from a major mining company, and we've seen that happen through Turquoise Hill, and if we can see that in the gas space, I think that shows the world that Mongolia is open for business, and I see the intent at government level. They recognise the issues and are working towards addressing those, and all of the infrastructure investment down south around the borders and road and rail and what have you are fantastic. So I think, Mongolia is evolving and has a very bright future in front of it.
Well, I'm just on dwelling what Colin said. With expected new policies and the implementation of the policies, I think Mongolia economy will improve. Currently, it's the GDP growth of the GDP is from 6 to 8% annually. I think probably it will progress further. But I think the one thing for Mongolia, I just would like to point it out is how it's actually improved from economic productivity point of view. in the last 10 years, right? So especially in mining sector, for large projects like for Xanadu's Harmakte, I think there's already a ready human resources. If you look at the Oyu Tolgoi, which is most complex block cave mining operation within Asia, where lots of different companies comes in, looks at the practices. 96% of the workforce there is actually Mongolian, right? So that shows how Mongolia workforce is ready for mining operations. So if it's juniors or if it's majors comes in, definitely economy is quite well prepared for that from that perspective.
Well, one of the things that goes unnoticed is that our local capital market grew about tenfold in the last 5 years. It was about 300 million market cap, the whole market cap. It was very small. And then now it's about 3 billion. And one of the key reasons is that all the major banks are listed, stock exchange itself is listed. And with that, one of the things I've noticed is that Mongolians are becoming shareholders and investors themselves, even though mostly retail still. And then what they're demanding for a change in legislations, capital market laws, investor protection is actually really beneficial for international investors as well, because at the end of the day, investor is investor, so they all want the same things, and all the other stakeholders as well. So I think that has put in the past, people used to demand as a country's resident, there's this international companies doing businesses, but now the point of view has changed as they themselves become an investor. So there's a really big change, and as more and more people are becoming capital market participants, and through that, I think our economy is growing as well, not only from mining sector. So, yeah.
Excellent, thank you. I think this is time where we can ask the audience. Does anyone wish to ask a question? Yep, that's okay, no worries. Okay, so one of my final questions to wrap up. For local investors, are they seeing interest from local investors into domestic projects, or is it more of an international community? Who wants to start?
I was really interested to hear you comment on growing retail investors on the local exchange. I have much more experience with Indonesia, where I've seen it come from nowhere to a massive exchange which attracts money from all over the world. And I think if we can create the conditions for that to occur in Mongolia, that'll be a magnificent outcome. Because at the end of the day, as you say, people are agnostic really about which exchange they put their money on. The other good point that was made was about the labour and the human resources. At the end of the day, my saying is you need mineral resources, human resources and capital resources in that order. Don't muck it up. And I think the country's done a great job of education and training, and the industry's done a great job of education and training. And as I said before, you don't build an Australian mine in Mongolia, you build a Mongolian mine in Mongolia, owned and operated and run by Mongolians, and that'd be a great outcome.
Just from sharing from my experience with our company, right? So whether the Mongolians are actually investing, I think if you compare it against 10 years ago, I think lots of Mongolian capitalists is available and investing into the countries. Just example, in 2 rounds of small raises I did with Australian investors, I think from 15 to 20% were actually raised from Mongolia. That actually shows that Mongolians are strong believers in the Mongolian economy story. Plus, also the foreign investors feels much more comfortable with the experienced team. As Nara pointed out, the experienced team in operation and management and board level is very essential to be able to navigate the risks in that jurisdiction, right? Because at the end of the day, risk is just the perception, right? So it's you just accustomed to operating in that environment with certain risks, right? So, for example, in Mongolia, we put 3-year-olds on a horseback, right? So, but we don't put our 3-year-olds into a pool or on a ski, right? But if you compare it with Swiss people, they probably put the kids on a ski, 3-year-olds, right? So it's really depending on how you see it, what do you think as a risk, as a perception.
Well, thank you. Naran, anything to add? No? Okay. Well, that actually wraps up our Mongolia panel for today. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us, and hope you enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you. Pleasure.